All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Justin D'Souza. I'm a quantitative specialist here at Statistics Solutions. During today's webinar, we are going to cover the key steps for cleaning data in SPSS. So the cleaning and data management steps, so your data is ready to answer your research questions. We will be sending everyone a copy of the recording of the webinar. And at the end of the session today, I will be doing a question and answer session as well. So if you have any questions, you can type those into the chat box or the question and answer box, and we will designate some time at the end to cover those questions. I will be going through the information kind of efficiently, kind of quickly, and that's the purpose of the recording. You can go back and rewind and slow down and watch things again. During the webinar today, I'll start out by giving a brief overview of the services that our company Statistics Solutions provides. Then we will dive into today's topic about cleaning and SPSS. I have a sample spreadsheet that we can go through today. Then we'll conclude with a summary and the question and answer session. Our company, Statistics Solutions, provides assistance with every part of the dissertation process. The way our company works is we have literature review specialists and we have quantitative and qualitative methodologists. No matter where you are in the process, if you have hit a roadblock, we have specialists here who can help you out, give you guidance, and steer you in the right direction. We help with the topic development, the framing of research questions and hypotheses, trying to pinpoint, is a quantitative method better than a qualitative method for your study? Maybe you need to do mixed methods potentially. And then we discuss and assist with prospectus and concept papers, the proposal chapters, which includes the introduction, literature review, and the methodology. We assist with IRB forms, data entry templates. We can host a survey for you if you're doing a quantitative or qualitative study. We have our own SurveyMonkey account in which we can host the survey for you and provide responses. And then once the data has been collected, we can help you with the results chapter, both quantitative and qualitative, and the final parts of the dissertation, the discussion and PowerPoint defense. And once you've defended and you have an approved paper, we can help take your publication, your dissertation, and condense it for a journal. So if you have any questions about the assistance that we provide, you can give us a call at 727-442-4290. On this slide, I have a couple hyperlinks in which you can view the upcoming webinars that we will be doing in the future, as well as the recordings for the previous webinars we've already done. So assuming that we're doing a quantitative study, first of all, and you've administered a survey instrument, maybe it's archival data or you used a survey, you then can upload the data into SPSS, which is the most common software used today for crunching numbers and presenting analysis. There are other options like SAS and R, but SPSS I would recommend for beginners or people who aren't as adept at statistics. It's really quite intuitive in that everything is point and click, and there are a million tutorials on YouTube and Google that you can check out. The first step you want to do once you receive your spreadsheet is you want to add an ID variable to every participant. So every row of your data, rows are going to be participants and columns are going to be the variables of interest. Every single participant or company, whatever the unit of interest is, you want to give them all an ID number. And the reason for this is so you can keep track. You can keep track of who is staying in your study, maybe somebody didn't complete all the questions and they need to be removed, you can easily identify who those people were at the end of the process. So it's a good way to keep a running record of everybody. Then you want to name all the variables of interest that are going to be in the spreadsheet. And there's a really quick way to do that in Excel, which I will show you. And the final note here is to save your spreadsheet after you make any adjustments, whether it's recoding variables from string format to numeric, meaning changing it from words to numbers, or once you've eliminated cases, people who didn't respond, or outliers, you'll want to take those people out, but you want to save your spreadsheet after you make every adjustment, just in case you want to go back to a previous step. So here I have a sample spreadsheet in SPSS, and this is what the data looks like. This was extracted directly from SurveyMonkey. And this study used 3 previously validated instruments. The first 7 items here measure leadership effectiveness. The following 6 measure job satisfaction. And the final 5 measure organizational performance. The first thing we want to do here is add an ID column. So this is data view. Data view shows you for each participant, how did they respond to all the survey questions? The columns are the survey questions. Variable view shows you what the questions were asking. Add an ID column, I'm going to right click here and insert a variable. And we'll call it ID. Then we need to count how many participants we have. It goes down to 91. So we can go into Excel now and create a quick ID. And usually I just count the people in ascending order. And if you start the list in Excel and then drag down, one through 91, and then we can copy and paste that right here in SPSS. Everybody has an ID now. And as soon as you receive the spreadsheet, you should do just a cursory review of how it looks. Are there missing cases? What do those missing cases look like? And we can see right away, there are some people who may have consented, but then just failed to respond to anything else. So they may have consented and then dropped out, or maybe they consented, but they didn't meet the criteria for participation. So we need to keep a note of this, that these people probably need to come out, the people who didn't respond to anything. People who missed items here and there are many ways to handle that, which we will discuss in the presentation today. But just as a quick review, I can see it looks like 5 people altogether did not respond to anything after consent. Good. The next step is naming all your variables of interest. Okay. We already tackled number 1 here. We have an ID number for every participant. Then we can name every variable of interest. And as I said, the first 7 items for leadership effectiveness. A quick way to do this in Excel is to start the list, leadership effectiveness. You do the first couple cases and then drag down, very much like the ID column. Then we have job satisfaction. This one had 6 items. And then we have organizational performance. And this one had 5 items. Generally, there's not a quick way to do this in SPSS. You have to use Excel, and you can copy and paste what we've done here into these columns. Now all the variables of interest have been identified. Okay. First step done. I would recommend saving at this step and keep a note of what the sample size is. We have 91 cases right now. Like to put n equals 91. And what did we do here? We added ID and named variables of interest. All right. Now going back into the presentation. The next step is changing your Likert scale questions or anything that has string format, which are words. You want to change this to numeric format. Okay, so changing words to numbers. And the second bullet point here is looking at the scoring instructions for your survey and identifying if anything needs to be reverse coded. Many times the default procedure is 1 is strongly agree and 5 is strongly disagree. SurveyMonkey and Qualtrics may set up the survey in this format, but oftentimes you want to reverse this. You want 1 to be a strongly disagree and a 5 to be strongly agree. And for this step, we need to change this final survey here. You can see it's all words, agree, disagree, neutral. This needs to be changed to a 1 to 5 scale. A quick way to do this, and you could do it manually. You could sort the column in ascending order. And agree should be a 4, neither agree should be a 3, and you could just copy paste. Maybe not too bad with only 5 items, but if you have 20 or more items, it's a pretty tedious procedure. So instead, you can go to transform and recode into same variables. And we will move over all the organizational performance items into this right box. And we need to establish what are the old values and what are the new values going to be. The way you can do this quickly is copying and pasting. So you can take a strongly disagree, copy, go into old and new values and paste it here. A strongly disagree should be a 1. Disagree should be a 2. The middle response, neither agree nor disagree, 3. Agree will be a 4. And strongly agree will be a 5. Now I can click OK, and it's going to run this command. What I would recommend doing for most procedures in SPSS is click paste. Clicking paste is going to generate syntax, and syntax is basically the running code of the analyses that you are running in SPSS. So if you gave this to someone that is completely blind to your study, they can kind of see the steps in the process that you followed for cleaning the data. And you can add comments if you put an asterisk like this. And what did we do here? This is the code for changing from string to numeric. Okay. And we can see these responses here. Run syntax, you just need to highlight the code and click the green arrow. And you'll see this is all going to change. Now we have 1 to 5. Okay, I could have also just clicked OK, but I like clicking paste for most things to generate a syntax file. Now we can see that it's still in string format. If you have the little A symbol here, we need to change it to numeric. It still thinks it's words, and all you do is you change it to numeric right here, and then you copy and paste down. The other step is looking at the Likert scale. Now, for leadership effectiveness and job satisfaction, these both use a strongly agree to strongly disagree scale, with a 1 being strongly agree and a 5 being strongly disagree. For leadership effectiveness, all of these items are positively phrased. So we would want higher scores or more agreeability to mean a higher value. So we need to flip-flop the Likert scale for both of these tools. And to do that, you use the same function. Go to recode into same variables. And then we'll move over leadership effectiveness through job satisfaction. And we need to flip the Likert scale. So 1 becomes a 5, 2 becomes a 4, 3 stays the same. You don't actually have to put that 1 in, but I like to, just for the visual. And 5 becomes a 1. So you should go up the Likert scale and down. So 1 through 5 and 5 through 1. Again, we can click paste and add a comment. This is reverse coding, leader effectiveness, job satisfaction. Now we can highlight this code and click the green arrow, and that's going to flip-flop the Likert scale. And then we need to fix the value labels here. So no longer is a 1 strongly agree, a 1 is now strongly disagree. We'll go ahead and remove these. 1 is strongly disagree. Okay, and then I can copy and paste this all the way down here. And now we can save. Okay, still N is 91, and we have changed from string to numeric and reversed. All right. The next step is looking at missing responses. So people who miss complete surveys or people who fail to miss items in the middle here and there. There are many ways to deal with missing data. You can impute, meaning you can use a regression model to predict what those missing values may have been, which is a little bit of a more complicated procedure. You can also remove the people altogether. If you have a large enough sample size, if they missed responses, you can just take those people out. And the key thing there is if you're above the sample size required. If you have room to lose people, then I think that's an acceptable procedure. What I'm going to show you today is replacing the missing values with the average. You can use the average or the median for replacement. And that's good for people who missed an item here or there in the middle. Okay, the first thing we'll look at is identifying the people who didn't respond to anything after consent. And remember, it was these people. I think there were 5 of them altogether. And kind of a quick way to find those is just pick a column anywhere in the middle and sort that column in ascending order. And that is going to show you different ones. One here, you can see these 5 people need to come out because we don't have any data for them for any of the 3 surveys. highlight the rows. You use the Shift key to highlight all of them, and then right click and clear. Pretty drastic step there. All right, so we've gone down from 91 to 86. I would recommend saving. We have 86, and this is removing all non-responses. Now we can see that there are some people that missed an item in the middle, and the way to deal with this is with mean replacement. You can go to transform and replace missing values. Then this box comes up, and we're going to put in everything. We're going to put in all 3 surveys into this right box. And the default procedure is going to use the average to replace the data, okay? And I can click paste again. Clicking paste is going to give you the code for running the replacement option. And comment to say replacing this data with the mean. So if I highlight all this code and click the green arrow, what it's going to do is it's going to create duplicates of every variable with the _1 after it. And wherever you see an _1, all the missing data has been replaced with the average. Okay, let's try and find an example here. So job satisfaction 5, this person missed that item. And as I go towards the end, job satisfaction 5_1 now has the average for this column. It's no longer missing. We've replaced the missing value with the average of this column. And a good time to save again. The next step is creating composite scores. You want to create a composite score based on the scoring instructions from the authors of the original instrument. This primarily applies to using surveys. If you're using archival data, you might not need to do this necessarily. But with previously validated instruments that are measuring constructs, job satisfaction or performance, you have to create an overall score. To do this, we will create a mean or sum based on the scoring instructions. Then you want to identify if there are any outliers. You want to remove cases that are very high, or extremely low. And there is a quick way to identify that in SPSS. Creating composite scores, what we'll do is go to transform and compute variable. It gives you this dialog box, and we want to create an overall leadership effectiveness variable. To do this, you give it a name, leadership effectiveness overall, we'll call it, and then you need to put in the command. So you can do this a couple ways. You can say, I want to take an average, the mean of these items, and you can put every single one in like this. But if you have a lot of survey questions, the best way is to put in the first one, and then write the word to, and include the last one. This is going to take an average of all 7 leadership effectiveness items. Again, I'll click paste. Let's do the other 2. Job satisfaction. Mean of item 1 through item 6. I used the incorrect ones here. I just realized. So remember that the mean replaced for the imputation or the missing data is at the bottom. So it might be recommended to once you have the mean replaced data, just delete your original, just so you don't mix up the two. And that's what I'll do right now. Let's take out these questions because these ones had missing data. And then let's do that command again. Should be the one with the underscore after it, _1. All right, and then job satisfaction. And this is a useful button right here as well. It shows you any previously used commands that you've used recently. So you can quickly go to compute variable right there because I just used that command. Organizational performance, we're taking an average of the 5 items. All right, we have the code for all 3. If I highlight and click the green arrow, it's going to run the syntax and create the composite scores. And we can see those at the bottom here. We have leadership effectiveness, job satisfaction, and organizational performance. And looking in data view, this is what it looks like. Everybody has a score. Okay. Let's save again. And this was creating composite scores and deleting old survey questions and just retaining the missing values replaced ones. And once you've done that step, once you have your composite scores, you're really ready to start crunching your numbers. You can run descriptive statistics on them. You can do histograms and bar plots. You can check for normality. So some things like that, you can go to analyze descriptive statistics and descriptives. And usually you want to do descriptives on the composite scores. So click OK there. This is going to give you descriptive statistics on those 3 variables: sample size, lowest score, the minimum, the maximum, the mean, the standard deviation. The mean is probably the most important value there. You can also do checks for normality. And there are quite a few ways to do that. You can do it visually. You can also do it with tests of significance, like Shapiro-Wilk tests or Kolmogorov-Smirnov tests. So if you go to descriptive statistics and then explore, and we put in these 3 variables here, and if you go to plots, mark this box right here, normality plots with the tests, click OK. This is going to give you tests of normality, 2 of them. So a Kolmogorov-Smirnov test has its own formula, and a Shapiro-Wilk test has its own formula. As we can see here, usually you want to see non-significant results, meaning a p-value greater than 0.05. All of these are below, meaning that the data probably doesn't follow a bell-shaped curve. At which point you can make adjustments to your data, you can transform it, you could run non-parametric tests instead. These are the visual ways of checking for normality. So this one looks pretty good. You might get counterintuitive findings depending on which method you use. I prefer using tests like this as opposed to visually looking at it, because a visual interpretation is subjective, whereas these tests are really telling you the facts. It's objective. Okay, and another thing I should show is how to check for outliers. And based on the citation here, you can standardize your scores and identify if there are extreme high or extreme low values. Okay, to do this, you can go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, and Descriptives. We were actually in this menu before, so everything's already in the box. All you need to do is check mark this box right here, Save Standardized Values as Variables. That is going to convert all the values to z-scores. Okay, so if I click OK, you're going to see 3 new variables with a z in front of them, and these are standardized. Based on the citation, if the values exceed, if they go above 3.29 or if they go below negative 3.29, then you have cases that are outliers and may need to be removed. Quick way to do that is just sort these columns in ascending and descending order. So right click, sort in ascending order. The lowest value here is negative 2.79. That doesn't hit the threshold of 3.29 or negative 3.29 in this case. Then you can do descending order, and the highest value is 0.97, which is lower than that cutoff. Well, so you can do the same thing for the other variables, ascending and descending, and none of these values exceed positive or negative 3.29. Therefore, we don't have any outliers. This is essentially our final spreadsheet. And at this point, once you have the final sample size, you've created composite scores, put final at the end, and usually put the day's date. Now you can see all the different times we saved. And if for some reason your committee reviews the paper and the data set and they say, I kind of want to see what you did between removing the responses and replacing with the missing average, you can go back easily to that step. So just be very descriptive in the titles that you give. All right, at that step, you can then start running your results, run demographic comparisons, look at frequencies and percentages for things like gender, ethnicity, education. Then based on your research questions, if you're doing correlations, regressions, or ANOVAs, you have to test for assumptions. Things like normality that I showed you just a few minutes ago. Normality is one of the assumptions of many analyses, ANOVAs and t-tests. So you need to make sure the data follows the assumptions. And once you've checked the assumptions and your data is good to go, you can then address the research questions with your data analyses that you proposed in your methodology. That concludes the webinar for today. I'll now do a question and answer session. If we have any questions, you can type those into the chat box. If you have any questions about the services that we provide, you can give us an email at info@statisticsolutions.com, or you can give us a call at 727-442-4290 for a free consultation. So yeah, if you have any questions, please type those into the chat box and we can go through them. And we will be sending everyone a recording of the webinar, most likely tomorrow, as well as a copy of the PowerPoint. Show you these hyperlinks here. You can see the upcoming webinars at this hyperlink. We do every chapter. We do results chapter, presentations, methodology, literature review. I will be doing a defense preparation webinar in a couple weeks. And then on the archive link, you can view all the past recordings that we've done for previous webinars. All right, looks like we have a question from Jana. She asks, is there any additional support or workshops for working with longitudinal population data? Not specifically for the webinars that we're doing, but a lot of the same principles or the same approach that I showed in today's would apply to longitudinal data as well. If you have archival data, you do a lot of the same procedures in terms of cleaning the data, making sure there's no missing responses, checking the data for outliers and assumption testing. You follow the same procedures regardless if it's survey or archival data. All right, we have a question from Deborah. Can you walk us through running a power analysis SPSS to see if our sample size is sufficient for different statistical tests, including for a principal component factor analysis on SPSS AMOS? Yeah, great question. In terms of for the principal component factor analysis, I don't think there is truly a power analysis for that. There's more rule of thumbs. Like if you have 10 variables, usually you need, and you'll see many different citations for this with different cutoffs, but people might say you need 10 participants per variable or per survey item that you're examining. So there isn't really a power analysis or a PCA or a factor analysis. Do you know what analyses you proposed in your methodology? I can kind of pinpoint that one in particular. But this is G-Power, by the way. G-Power is a software that's used to determine your minimum sample size. And this is usually done in the methodology phase, and there are many different options. There are t-tests, which you can do differences between two groups, and G-Power, it's G-Power. At the top left, you can see it here, G-Power 3.1.97. You just Google G-Power in Google, download. Hyperlink is over here. It's a free software. And you scroll down, you can see download the G-Power manual and download the software right here. But within G-Power, and this is just an example here, if you're testing between two groups, like a control and a treatment group, is there a difference in job satisfaction between males and females? Hypothetically, then you can do a t-test. And these are all the inputs that you can adjust. Usually a two-tailed test is done and power is adjusted to 0.8 in social sciences today. Putting in all these parameters, you need a minimum sample ideally of 128 participants, which would be 64 males and 64 females to run this t-test ideally. Now, there are many other power analyses. You can do it for ANOVAs, MANOVAs, and regressions. So if you're doing a predictive study and you're trying to predict an outcome, perfect. I just saw that you asked about an ANOVA. So an ANOVA right here, usually it's a one-way ANOVA, but they do have more complex options if you're doing interaction effects. An ANOVA is used to test for differences between groups. So going beyond just two groups, if it was just male and female, but say we use ethnicity as a variable instead, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, other, something like that. And we have 5 groups, we change the power to 0.8. And usually the effect size, if you hover your mouse over the effect size, it tells you what is a small, medium, and large effect size. And usually you go with a medium effect size, unless there's literature in your topic, say, no, you should use a small or a large effect size instead. But if you don't have that literature support, just go with a medium effect size. change the power to 0.8, and identify how many groups you're comparing. Click calculate, and we can see we need about 200 participants. Dividing that by 5 means you need about 40 people in every group. Does that make sense? And there isn't a way to do this in SPSS. You can't do a power analysis in SPSS, so you have to download a third-party software like GPower. Okay, sounds good. And they do have other options like a linear regression as well. Instead, right here, instead of groups, you need to identify how many predictor variables are you looking at. Okay, so gender and age predict job satisfaction. You have 2 predictors, gender and age. So you just leave this here as 2, calculate. To run this regression ideally, you need 68 participants. And this is just a benchmark, something to shoot for. In the last couple years, obviously with COVID-19, I've seen a lot of studies not reach sample size minimum, and that's okay. There are obvious limitations, and you have to interpret with caution. That's the golden phrase, is we didn't obtain our sample size, therefore we are going to interpret the results with a level of caution. And then you acknowledge that limitation in your final chapter. Okay, do we have any other questions? Looks like our next webinar will be the 10th, next Monday. And this will be done by my colleague, David, and he'll walk through how to present quantitative results. And so some of the things I discussed today, looking at descriptives and maybe checking assumptions, he will show you how to present that information in your results chapter. All right, any final questions? All right, very good. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Come join us again for the future webinars and let us know if you have any questions. We will be sending a copy of the PowerPoint and the webinar shortly, either later this evening or tomorrow morning. But have a great day. We will be in touch.